let's talk about something that's important to the parents out there. Let's say you're a family of three or four, you're considering moving to Europe, especially Italy. Julia, tell us a little bit about the education system in Italy. What can parents coming from North America to Italy expect to receive in terms of education?
Mhm,
And just like a general rundown, if you
mhm.
can provide us some details, please.
All right. So if your biggest obstacle is that your children don't speak Italian, there's plenty of international schools. So if your children, if you have children and they have to, keep studying, you can count on that. There's international schools. But let's say your children already know some Italian because you're from mixed nationality family. All right. You're a bilingual family. The educational system is a little different. For example, I remember when I was in California, that my family was telling me that you choose the neighborhood you're going to settle your family in according to the schools, to the quality of the schools. And I was like, why is that? And I discovered that you can only sign up your children for school in the neighborhood you live in. Like if there's a middle school or a elementary school in your neighborhood, that's the school you're going to. For example, if you live in A neighborhood, you can't send your kids to school in B neighborhood. But that doesn't apply to Italy because there's not so many schools in every single neighborhood. My hometown, for example, doesn't have a high school. So I had to go to the next high school, but to the next city's high school. But even people who live in Velletri is the city with a lot of high schools, even people that live there, they could decide to go to another school. Like, I don't like this high school. I want to go to the one in this other city. And they will be like, sure, let's send an application and you're set. That's it. And I think there's 1 year more in elementary school and 1 year less in middle school. There are certain high schools that are like, you only need to do it for 3 years. So you could study for 3 years and then go to work if that's what pleases you. But basically, every high school lasts 5 years, which means you get out of high school when you are 18 or 19. And then, it's university. But, a big perk in Italy, I think, is that you can choose the high school that suits you best without being bound to the neighborhood. So that's a pretty good point.
Let's talk about a topic that gets people buzzing, which is car dependency.
Huh.
In America, I have a car here. Like it's almost impossible to get by without a car. You know this too, Julia. It's impossible unless you maybe live in New York, right?
Mhm.
But if you live in any other city, you definitely need a car. Like there's just no way around it. Now, in Europe, things are very different. Very different. Even in the smaller cities, right? A different setup. Like the cities are more compressed, right?
Mhm.
Here, the cities are more like spread out. So
Yep.
in order for you just to get your daily groceries, very typically you have to drive a mile to 3 miles by car. Of course, there are
Mhm.
exceptions. You live very close to whatever, Walmart, HEB. I wanted to
Yep.
get your take now on the transportation system in Rome and
Mhm.
how it compares to, let's say, the public transportation available in Southern California. What are some similarities? What are some differences? If you can talk also about like the scheduled times, like
Mhm.
the intervals between the metro.
Yep.
I'd like to get as much information from you as possible so our listeners can kind of feel what that's like compared to where they're from.
Absolutely. So when I was in California, I've never gotten on a bus, never set foot on a bus for 2 years and a half. And that was, I know, that was mainly for two reasons. Uh, Public transportation where I lived sucked big time. I will be very honest about it. There were buses, but they were not suitable for my needs. And in, don't get me started on Los Angeles. Uh, Buses in Los Angeles are probably one of the most dangerous thing you can set foot on. So same thing, never set foot on a bus in Los Angeles. The railways are like, I was surprised because Italy has a high speed railroads, And California doesn't almost have railroads at all. Like there were only 4 trains throughout the day that went not even from my city, but from the nearest city to LA for a day. While where I live, there isn't a train station anymore, but the nearest city, Velletri, the one with high schools, it's got a train station that leads directly to Rome. And there's trains every half an hour from 5:30 to 7:30. Then it's like one every hour until 12, 2. And then it's again, one every half an hour between 5-ish to 8. So there's plenty of trains going and coming from Rome. So that's a really good transportation system. Rome, it's a whole other story. Rome, unfortunately, has got lots of traffic because you will be relieved to hear this. We depend on cars as well. We cannot let go of cars. So don't you worry. But be prepared for traffic because it's horrible. People who say driving in LA is crazy have never been to Rome. They will, have their mind cleared after they come to Rome. The problem with Rome is this. There's only, I would say 2, but it's actually 3. But there's mainly 2 subway lines, the A line and the B line. There is a C line, but it's basically open, closed. We still don't understand what's going on with that line. Some stations are closed, some stations are open. It's barely, it's brand new. So we don't expect it to work well. Buses are on strike almost all the time. There's trams. Those ones work well, but you still can't get anywhere, you can't get everywhere by tram. And basically, you cannot depend on public transportation in Rome. I was reading on a blog of a person that has lived in Rome for 12 years. And she said, if you live in the north of Rome and you work in the south of Rome, your life is going to be a living hell. Because Rome is like this, right? And there's a circle going around Rome. To get from here to here, it should take half an hour, not even. Some days on rush hours, it takes up to 3 hours. So people who have to go to work at 8, they need to wake up at 4:30. It's horrible. Public transportation in Rome is horrible, but very accessible if we speak about prices.
The reality is that people also have different options, right? They can jump on a bike if they wanted to, right?
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
not just saying a motorbike, but an actual bicycle, which might be the quickest, most efficient way to get from A to B, because you can overtake like crazy, right? You can sneak through the traffic. I'm not saying that's convenient by any means, or I'm not recommending people to do that, but it sure sounds like an exciting idea to do. Like here, my daily life is like I jump into my car and wherever I need to go to, and I live now in southern Texas, I go by car. And the car is very convenient, but it'd be so nice, Julia, to have public transportation available whenever I need it. Even if it's just like a bus or even just one train line.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist. Because of that, here, stateside, I walk a lot less than I do in Europe. Definitely walk a lot less. And I have a friend, he lives in Brussels, and he sends me pictures all the time of long bike rides, and they are real long, 100 kilometers per ride sometimes.
Wow.
This is serious stuff, Julia. 100 kilometers per ride. And
that's the Giro d'Italia. That's great.
he is really doing that, and he's doing that, he is going like from Brussels to Antwerp and then some other places, I guess, and then he goes back. But that's the kind of lifestyle that so many Americans are out there, a lifestyle that prioritizes physical fitness over car dependency. And so when I'm going to be in Italy very soon, I'm probably going to get a bicycle, and I'm going to go crazy with that bicycle because I miss it so much. Where I grew up, Julia, like we were going on these rides every weekend, spring, summer, early autumn, all the time. It was so much fun, like not kidding. Probably the best time of my whole childhood. You're on your bicycle, you can observe the scenery a lot better, especially if there's not much traffic. So I'm not sure how feasible that would be in Rome, but if people were to live if people were to live on the outskirts of Rome, right, it's very doable, but I'm sure also in the city, it's no problem to ride a bicycle, correct?
No, there's also Lime, Uber. There's lots of resources if you want to say, oh, today I don't feel like getting my car, but I don't have a bike. You can find lots of Uber bikes, Lime bikes. There's plenty others. I'm not caught up on that, but there's plenty other apps and things you can use to rent a bike or scooters. It's totally doable in the center of Rome. I wouldn't advise taking your bike to go, for example, from the north to the south of Rome or from the west to the east, for a simple reason, which is Rome is also spread out. So sometimes it's much better to get the A line or the B line, because the A line and the B line do this in Rome. So, and that's like northwest and, you know, southeast. So if you need to go from this area to this area, totally get your subway. That's going to be much better. But bikes and scooters, totally doable in the city center. In the outskirts, it could be a little more difficult because we don't have bike lanes in every city. But if you are a careful rider, absolutely, go for it.
Excellent. The last thing I wanted to squeeze out of you is,
Yep.
of course, the cost of public transportation. You want to visit all the cool places every day. You need to travel back and forth between work and home. What does it cost?
Rome is divided into areas, so they're in circles, right? The inner circle is called Area A, and then there's Area B, and then there's Area C, and so on. So basically, according to where you live, you will need to get a multi-area, what's it called? Subscription, yes. Multi-area subscription, and the cost varies a lot. For example, a yearly pass for Rome, like just the city center, which is the inner circle, costs 250, but you can get on the A line, on the B line, on the C line. You can get on trams, you can get on buses, and even regional trains. Sorry, not regional trains, but trains that, you know, transit throughout the inner area. But there's also people who have not, like, who are unemployed. There's financial funds. That's the word I was looking for. Or for students, for example, because students usually don't work and study. So if you're a student and you live in Rome and your family makes less than 20,000 a year, your yearly pass for the inner circle, then it costs 150. The cost is pretty doable. For example, where I live, you have different solutions, because we're also talking about the possibility of people wanting to move into the greater Roman area. Oops, sorry, which is like in the outskirts. So the area I live in is called the Roman Castles. Very interesting story. We'll get into it like some other time. That's called the B area. So a monthly pass for the B area, which means that you can get any means of public transportation in the inner circle, so Rome capital, and regional trains that go from B area to A area and vice versa. It's 60 euros a month, which is totally doable if you consider that a train ticket from where I live to Rome costs 3 euros per journey. And then it's another €1.50 for the subway, and then it's another €1.50 for the, you know, for the bus. So if you're a student and you travel to Rome, or if you're a worker and you need to commute, and so you have to go to Rome every day, a monthly or yearly pass is probably the best option for you. And they don't cost so much, honestly.